funny, folks.
With arms wide open. Hey you guys, Alex at MISSILEBAITS here to talk about how to imitate baitfish in the wintertime. So I've got 4 baits here that I want to go through that show different styles of baitfish imitations and basically just different lures to throw to imitate baitfish in the wintertime. Baitfish, especially when the water temperature gets below about 40 degrees, baitfish become the primary bait source or food source for bass. This is an A-rig. This is a mini flex rig from Hog Farmer. I've got 3 different styles of baits on this A-rig, and there's a different reason I have each of these baits on the A-rig. So this top one, that's a Spunk Shad. That's a 3-inch Spunk Shad. I'll use the Spunk Shad for either teasers, or I'll use the Spunk Shad as all of my baits on an A-rig for one reason, and that's that little tiny twitch in the tail. When it gets really, really cold, I like to put the Spunk Shad on because it doesn't have that much action on it, and those fish actually key in on that. And that's why you see, you know, baits like a Diki rig do so well in the wintertime, because it's almost actionless. There's a little bit of secondary action with that tail moving, but that's really when I like to use that Spunk Shad, especially in the smaller size. Another bait I have on here on the bottom is a Shockwave. I typically like to use a boot tail style swim bait on the back of an A-rig because that's just a very common action, and it gets a lot of bites. That action gets a lot of bites from fish. They key in on those bait swimming through. Like if you get up on a windy point, cast that A-rig up there, that's a very common thing for little schools of bait fish to come up onto a point or go up shallow, and the bass like to key in on those little bait fish. So that's a very common one. This is frosted purple, as you can see, but that's another one. The very last one, and this one's a new one for me, but I've recently tried it and I really, really like it, is the Freedom Flyer 4.25 on an eye roll on an A-rig. And this bait I will actually use as my kicker, because if you have an A-rig that has 5 different swim baits on it, or 4 different swim baits on it, and then you have the one bait that stands out that has a little bit different action, this action is actually very different from a boot tail. So a boot tail kicks in the back like this. The Freedom Flyer actually does this as it's being pulled behind an A-rig. It's almost like a real swimming action. It doesn't kick, it's not like a thump, it's like a shimmy. I don't know, you'll have to see it. But I like to use a color that stands out a little better than the rest of them. And this spot remover color actually stands out a lot better than like a typical pearl or frosted purple or fishalicious, or anything that looks natural. This thing really pops, and so that's why I put this on here to show you guys. But yeah, try that Freedom Flyer out on your A-rig and check out the action on it. It's really, really good. It's absurd, really. So that's the A-rig. Another bait that I like to use in the wintertime is just a jig head, typically 3/16 and heavier, with a swim bait on it. And you can reel this in the middle of the water column, but what I like doing with it, and it's kind of a sneaky little deal, is hopping it on the bottom. Now this is our shrapnel color. This will imitate a bluegill or a perch really well, but we also have shad colors too. And what that's doing is when that bait's hopping off the bottom and falling down, it's actually imitating a shad that is dying, and or any kind of bait fish that has fallen to the bottom, and then it kind of kicks up and then starts slowly floating down again. Bass really key in on that when the water temps get sub 40. It's a really, really sneaky good bait to throw in the wintertime as well. Another one, and this is the whole craze right now, this is your typical jig head minnow setup, but this is with our eye roll and then our new Freedom Flyer. This is the live minnow color. It is absolutely one of my favorites. What I like to do with this, I like to use this for my casting jig head minnow setup. So I'm gonna be casting this to fish that look to be active on live scope or your forward facing sonar. I like to throw this out and sink it down to those fish until they, hopefully they see it. And then I'll sink it down and I'll just slowly start to shake and just pop the slack and slowly reel. And what you want to do is you want to keep that bait moving in a horizontal line. You don't want it jumping up and down. Once you get it down to that fish and you see that he sees your bait, keep it in a straight horizontal line. Try not to move it up and down too much on your screen, and just slowly twitch it. And what that's going to do is it causes that bait to roll just like that, and it'll roll back and forth, back and forth. It's giving them a little flash of just back and forth. And that's a great tried and true method to catch fish really year round, but especially in the winter time. When you start getting into late winter, heading into early spring, this is a killer pre-spawn bait. So just keep that in mind for those fish that you're trying to cast at. That's going to be your setup for the fish that you're trying to cast at on your live scope. And then lastly is just a tried and true Diki rig. This is, you got to have a 90-degree line tie jig head with typically a smaller hook. And this bait you're actually going to be dropping on fish. This is not your casting jig head. This is a 3-inch Spunk Shad on this is just a custom pill jig head. I think it's from a Do It mold. But this bait you're gonna wanna have somewhere between a 3/16 and a 3/8 ounce, sometimes a half, depending on how deep the fish are, jig head, and you're gonna wanna throw smaller baits on this. Smaller baits typically get more bites on a Diki rig in the wintertime, just because the bait fish from last year's spawn, or maybe the same year but earlier in the spring, that spawn, that's what those fish are gonna try and key in on. Now you can use bigger Diki rig setups, but they don't typically get as many bites. You might get a few big bites, but the smaller ones tend to be more successful. You have a higher success rate, in my opinion. This bait you're going to want to look on your forward-facing sonar and actually drop down on fish that you think are holding on to cover on the bottom. So if there's a brush pile, or if there's a stump, or if there's a rock, or a rock pile, then you want to drop this bait down onto that piece of structure, but you want to drop it down and hover it above that piece of structure. You'd be surprised on your forward-facing sonar units that there are a lot of fish that you don't even see on your screen because they're tucked down on the bottom. Their bellies are literally laying on the ground, on the bottom. So if you drop this bait down there and you let it sink all the way close to the bottom, I'd say within 10 foot or so, you can get it closer if you'd like, just to check and see if those fish are there. But you'd be surprised at how many fish, while you're sinking that bait down, are gonna rise up and look at that bait. And then you'll know within a matter of a few seconds or a minute if those fish are gonna eat, because they're gonna sit there and look at it, and they're gonna look and see, what is that? Oh, okay. And then they'll go up and grab it. But this is exactly the style of bait that they're keying in on and eating on all winter long. So this is a great bait to throw. A little trick, if you're having trouble getting fish to eat this or eat any of these wintertime baits that I just showed you, put some scent on your bait. Scent is killer for converting those bites, converting those looks into bites. So yeah, try those out. Let us know what you think. We are really, we're really happy to have the wintertime baits that we have. I think they work really well. The Shockwaves are great. The Spunk Shads are great for those minnows that just have a little bit of tail action. And then that Freedom Flyer is absolutely deadly as far as imitating a shad. So check them out.